All right, so one of the coolest things you can do in Photoshop has to be compositing. That's when you take two different images and combine them into one image. So if you want to learn how to make something like this, stick around. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get our two images. I have a picture of this lion here, as well as a picture of this background. And basically, in order to composite them together, we want to make sure that the lion isn't too small for this image, because we don't want to have to scale it up, causing pixelation. If we take our lion and we need to drag it into this photo, there's a few different ways to do that. One would be to simply hit the V key to get the selection tool. And if you hold down Shift and drag all the way up here and just let it sit on that photo for a second, and then drag it down and let go, you'll see that it will add in the lion into the background of this picture. But for me, that is just a little bit too slow. So what I prefer to do is just come over here, and with the lion image on the screen, I hit Command A, Command C, and then I go to this photo and hit Command V, and that copies it. So Command A is select all, that selects the entire image. Command C copies it, and Command V pastes it into your new background. Again, either one is fine. For me, I prefer to work with key commands and avoid dragging my mouse around too much when it isn't 100% necessary. So now that we have our images combined together, we can see that our lion is, in fact, pretty good size for this background. He's actually a little bit taller than this image. So what we'll do is we'll hit Command T. That's going to allow us to size down our lion. I'm just going to grab one of these control points and just kind of drag it down roughly to decide how big I want it and roughly where I want to put it. And since he's kind of standing on this log, it wouldn't hurt to find something that kind of jets up a little bit, or maybe find a couple little spots in the grass where we see some noticeable shadows behind them. So if I can find something that kind of looks like a ridge, we'll just sort of put him right there for now. Now, before I move on, I want to make sure to hit the check button or hit the return key to turn off that free transform control. Now I want to remove the background from this tiger. And so in order to do that, I'm going to go over and just click on the object selection tool. And with this tool, I can pretty much just come down and hover over the tiger and click once and get a selection. But the problem is that this selection alone is not going to be good enough. Your composite is only as good as your selections. If you don't take time to refine your selections, you're going to end up with a composite that reflects that. A window that is going to really help us to refine this selection is the Select and Mask window. And again, as long as you have the object selection selected and you click on your tiger, you can go right up to Select and Mask. And if yours doesn't look like mine, you can go over to the right-hand side here, and you'll see you have some options for your view. You have onion skin, marching ants. For this one, the view that I prefer is over red. And the reason is because that's going to make it really obvious if I mess up. So at this point, I want to go ahead and hit Command plus to scale up my tiger. Then I'm going to hit the space bar to slide him over. For this, you really want to be in close, potentially even closer. Now, this first tool up here is a selection tool, but the tool right beneath it is the Refine Edge brush. And this brush is really helpful when you're dealing with hair or fur or things like that. And the only place you can access this brush is inside the Select and Mask window. So if I click on this tool, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of go around the outside. And what you'll see is that if I let go from time to time, I have my mouse clicked right now. If I let go, you'll see it has a way of kind of pulling out a little bit of stuff and adding in a little. And I'll be honest, this tool is not foolproof by a long shot. This tool has just as much potential to mess up your work as it does to fix it. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see if any red areas develop inside of our tiger. Okay, so we'll just continue to go around our tiger here, looking for any issues that might pop up. Again, the problems we're going to run into with this tool, as you can see, it's digging in too far in some of these spots right here. But the good news is When we export this, it's going to have a mask. So if we need to go back and paint anything in, it's going to be really easy to do. So it's a trade-off, right? We're getting some good hair, but at the same time, because it doesn't know, it wants to cut that black part off. Now, if we want to fix that right here in Select and Mask, we can just switch to the Selection tool, and we can kind of go back and reselect those colors where it just went in a little bit too far. We're also running into some little spots up in the ears where it's not sure if it wants that black in there or not. So in this case, is it easy? Is it foolproof? No, but it does give us better results on things like the mane here, and like right there it looks pretty good. And for as far as all these little extra spots, we'll clean that up when we're done. So back to our edge refine tool, go around the edges, pay close attention. Again, as you can see, it is definitely over selecting in some areas. So I'm going to try to just keep the edge of the brush against the edge of the fur and try not to go too far in. All right, so as we go here, you can see everything's looking pretty decent. Got our tail. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the tail got cut off in the photograph. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to use the selection tool to just create a little bob on the tail. So you can see how right now it's kind of, you can see it's cut off, but if I go up and grab the regular selection tool, the one right above, and I hold down Option, that's going to remove pixels from the selection. So I can just remove that little white spot, and that should look okay. If I wanted to hold down Option and go in a little bit further just to get rid of that hard edge, you can see then it goes too far, and that is just the world of automated selection tools. So we'll fix that with a mask and a brush when we're done. Okay, back to our selection tool here. Try to do this as quickly as possible. Don't worry about the bottom of the feet. We are not going to be keeping those. And so we want to just, again, not make this take too long and just come down here and help refine some of those selections. Now, you can see we're getting some grass pulled in a little bit. And again, we're losing spots that I would rather not lose. I'm just grabbing the selection tool to fix that. And maybe use the Option button and remove that right there. And go back to the hair refinement tool and finish up on this. The reality is, if you don't want to deal with this, then grab the pen tool and clip it out yourself. But when you're dealing with this much hair, it's just a complicated situation. There's not much you can do to make this all that much easier. I just went and grabbed the selection tool just to put back in a spot, and back to the edge selection tool, and we'll come up here and make sure to do a good job on this part of the mane right here, and there we go. Now, that's not the only tools we have to help get this selection looking good. Another thing we can do is to then come over to radius. And if we increase the radius to 1 or even 2, that will help to clean up. I'm going to leave it at 1. And then if we come down to decontaminate colors, that'll help remove some of that unwanted color around the edges. Notice we still have some little flyaways, but we can fix that in the main screen. So take one last look, make sure there aren't any big chunks of red on the edges inside that might have over selected. There's a little one right there. Again, it's not the end of the world. It's just, if you want to do good work, you got to pay attention to this stuff. And there we go. Easy fix. Well, sort of easy. Okay. Better fix. Okay, so everything else is looking pretty good. Again, always zoom in. You're kidding yourself if you think you don't need to. All it's doing is masking out these colors. So I can either try to struggle with the selection tool, or when we get back to the next window, I can easily fix that with the mask. All right, so if that's looking pretty decent, let's go ahead and click make sure it is set to output new layer with mask. And we'll click OK. And overall that looks pretty good. And I'm not seeing anything that's catching my eye with maybe the exception of that right there. And that. And that. So one of the cool things about having this mask automatically created is that rather than having to use the automated selection tools to fix this, I can just use a black brush. As long as I select the mask and I hit the B key, I'm going to go up and grab a standard brush. Grab a circle brush. I'm going to set the softness at about 50%. And I'll use the left bracket key to shrink it down to size. And then just erase anything that doesn't quite look normal. And again, you're never guaranteed to get a perfect clip using automated tools, but the combination of using automated tools and a brush can get you with a pretty decent looking selection. So we've got our tiger, and at this point we might opt to grab the selection tool and just kind of move them around and see what looks realistic. I think right there looks pretty good, but as we can see, if we zoom in, there's a hard line under his feet, and we're even missing a little bit of this back foot, and it doesn't look like the tiger is in the grass. So we're going to go ahead and fix that by using the mask to remove a little bit of the bottom of the foot of the tiger. But what I don't want is a clean line. I want it to look like grass is sticking up over his feet. And so to do that, rather than using a round brush, I'm going to hit the B key to initiate my brush tool. I'm then going to go down to, if we look here, you see we have general brushes. If I close that and we go down to dry media brushes, we'll find brushes that have a little bit more edge to them. I'm going to go up and try Kyle's charcoal brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the right bracket key. I'm going to click off and then hit the right bracket key to increase the size of this brush. And the way you do this is get it so it's about the size of maybe one of his feet. And really what you want to do is select the mask, make sure that your color is set to black. Then we can put the brush below his feet, click, and slowly drag up. And you'll see it start to eat away at the pixels in his feet. Click and slowly drag up. It's kind of got a like splattery effect, but we just want to take off that nice smooth line at the bottom on all of his feet. So we'll come up here and do the same thing, just to create the illusion that those feet are in the grass. And then we could also take a quick look at the tail and maybe just switch to a regular brush. Shrink it down. Again, click off before you try to shrink it. And then we just round that off right there. Looks pretty good. Okay, if we zoom back out now, it starts to look like we actually have some grass overlapping the feet. That looks definitely passable. And the next thing we're going to want to do is start to color correct our tiger to match our background. And if we look right now, it's not bad. It's pretty close right off the bat. But there's two things I want you to really think about when compositing images together. One is your black and white values. The other is matching colors. So, for example, if I was to hit the levels filter on my tiger here, and if the tiger looked something like this, right, where the white and black levels don't match the darkness of this background or the lightness of these highlights, it's really obvious that you have a composite. So getting your backgrounds and your contrast to match is really important. So let's go ahead and delete that. So there's two things you need to do. The first one is we are going to drag out a levels adjustment. So we'll go down to the adjustment layers. We'll select levels. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use these eyedroppers over here on the left-hand side to match our black and white level values to the background. So before we do anything, we want to go ahead and clip this levels effect to our tiger. Now we can do that two ways. You can either put your mouse on the line right here and hold down the Option key. That's going to be Alt on a PC and click. Or with all adjustment layers, you have a built-in clipping mask button right here. So you could use that too and get the exact same effect. So if I clip that, that just means that the black levels I'm about to sample from the background are only going to be applied to the tiger. So let's go ahead and grab our eyedropper and let's find something that is essentially as dark as it gets in this image. And zooming in is not a bad idea. Looks to me like these trees are pretty much in the shadows, so I'm going to click right there. And you might not notice a huge shift right off the bat. Let's go over here and grab the white eyedropper. And now for this, I want something that is as bright as possible. And it looks like to me this highlight here is the brightest. So we'll go ahead and click right in there. And you notice that that affected the tiger just a little bit. Brightened him up just a touch. So if we turn this on and off, you can see it's not having a huge effect. But the subtle effect and the subtle corrections to the lighting will make this blend better. Now that we have our black and white levels matched, let's go ahead and match our colors. So let's go ahead and select our tiger layer. Let's go up to Image, Adjustments, Match Color. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to select a different layer and match the colors, the overall tint of that layer, to our tiger. Right now under Source it says None. Notice that our tiger is selected in the preview, but under Source we need to change that to the name of this project, which currently is 110717. So I'll click on that, and then I'll go to where it says Layer, Layer 1 Copy, and I'm going to change that to Layer 0, because that is the layer of my background. So what it just did right there was it took all of the main tinted colors of the background and it applied them to the tiger. And as you can tell, it's too strong. What we're going to do is we're going to go up to the fade slider and notice that as I fade this away, it's removing those colors. And I want some tint from that background. I want this yellow light to be tinting the tiger to make it feel more realistic. Right here, it's too heavy. Something around 50 to 60 feels pretty good to me. So I'm going to leave mine right there at 61. Again, I know those are subtle changes, but trust me when I say those are going to make your images match better. Okay, now that we have our tiger with some color matching and its feet in the grass, let's go ahead and add a shadow. Because one of the biggest giveaways of composites is bad lighting compositing. Right now, it's pretty obvious that our sun is setting in the background. We've got this highlight up in the sky, which is letting us know that the lighting is coming from behind the tiger. For that reason, we should have shadows that match the shadows in the scene. Notice that all of these shadows on the grass are sort of coming towards us, right? This hill over here is in shadow, but this area right here is not. So the tiger would be blocking some of that light. So let's go ahead and create a shadow. Now, we're not going to use a drop shadow for this. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate our tiger. And the way we do that is by selecting the tiger layer and hitting Command J. With the tiger on top selected, we can go ahead and hit Command L. And that's going to bring up a levels adjustment window. This is not an adjustment layer. This will be destructive, but that's okay. We're working on a copy. And we pretty much want this completely black. And the easiest way to do that is to come to the bottom here and grab the white end of this slider and just slide it all the way to the left. Anytime you want to silhouette or completely blacken something out, that's an easy way to do it. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and now we have our shadow and our tiger. We're going to drag the shadow underneath the tiger. Then, with the shadow selected, we're going to go up to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertically. And as you can see, that's flipped our tiger upside down in the background there. We'll hit the V key, and you can either drag him down or you could use Shift down arrow That might be a little too slow. Let's go ahead and drag them down. And we're going to try to line those feet up as best as we can. Don't worry if it's not perfect. We do have a mask, so we could erase a little bit of that if we had to. But just go ahead and line it up for now. Make sure there's not a bunch of grass in between the shadow and the feet. Get them right under there and make sure that your tiger's on top and that your shadow's on the bottom. Because the next thing we're going to do is blur out that shadow a little bit. So with the shadow selected, we'll go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And mine's set up to about 27.5, which looks pretty good. It's just taking those sharp edges off that shadow. While that is a shadow, it's not a very believable shadow. So with the shadow selected, let's go ahead and drop our opacity down to something that matches these shadows, right? Our shadow shouldn't really be any darker than any of these shadows in the grass, somewhere around 30 to maybe 50. Okay, so then we have the angle of the shadow. Notice that it's coming straight off the tiger, and that just doesn't feel very realistic. It's hard to say exactly where this light is coming from, but either skewing this right or left I think would be fine. So with the shadow layer selected, I am going to go up to Edit, Transform. In this case, we'll go with Skew. And I'm just going to kind of skew it off to the right over here. Grab both these corners and just kind of give it a little angle. Just feels a little more natural. Notice that in the spots where it's kind of overlapping, you could also grab this corner and just bring it in a little bit. Maybe pull that out just a touch. And now we have some perspective on that shadow, which just feels a little more believable. All right, and when you're done with that, go ahead and hit the return key. Okay, so we've got our shadow, we've got our levels, we've got our colors. The last thing that I would recommend doing to sort of combine these images together would be adding some sort of subtle color correction that's going to affect both the top and the back layer. By having a slight color that's hitting all of these together, it's going to trick your eye into feeling like they're both in the same place. So what we'll do now is we'll go down to our adjustment layers. We'll go to something like either photo filter or color lookup. In this case, we'll use color lookup. And we can go up to where it says load 3D LUT. And if we open this up, we get some pretty interesting color lookups that we can play with. Let's go ahead and pick something like Candlelight Cube. Now right now, because of the layer I had selected, my lookup is like in the middle of my layer stack. I want to go ahead and click on the icon here and drag it all the way up to the top. Now you can see that having that color correction applied to both images really hides the fact that they were composited together in Photoshop. So if we just take a look at a couple of these, we could go to Crisp Warm, which doesn't seem to like us very much. That's because I had the mask selected. Let's go back to the icon here. Change that back to something like Drop Blues, Edgy Amber, as you can see. But let's go to something like, I don't know, I like the Late Sunset is pretty cool. It gives it a nice purple tint, but at the same time, it's a little too strong. So all we need to do is just select the color lookup, come over to opacity, and just drop this way down. I want it just enough so that I'm seeing just a little bit of tint in the tiger and a little bit of tint in the background. So for me, somewhere around 50 is not bad. Okay guys, and that is it right there. I hope this is going to help you in all your future composites. And just remember, get your black levels and your white levels to match your colors, get the lighting to match, and add in a little bit of color correction, and you should be good to go.